Chapter 5 of our book, The Road from Orion. Look out, New World, here we come, brave, intrepid, and then some, pioneers of maximum audacity whose resumes show that we are just a team, to live where others merely dream, building up a head of steam on the trail we blaze, changing into fact. We shall ride into history, turning myth into truth. We shall surely gaze on the sweet unfolding of an antique mystery. All will be revealed on the trail we blaze. Lyrics to The Trail We Blaze, Elton John. John and I packed just enough clothes and supplies, hiking boots, a jacket for the cool evenings, a couple research notebooks, and 2 cases of Coors beer, which we were now drinking and spilling all over the old Bronco as it lurched up the last dusty road to Lucia's house. The sun burned relentlessly above the mountains along the road, which curved sharply to the right, and the landmark we were looking for soon splashed into view. A natural granite-tiered waterfall spilled out of the cliff, rocky jawbones like a huge swirling tongue in a blank stone face. Against the wall sky of amethyst mountains, it rose before us like a mutant living thing, writhing, eyeless, menacing in its height. Defensively, John swerved sharply, almost missing the road to Lucia's. Then he downshifted the Jeep to scale the last narrow incline, where a red tile roof separated a tan 2-story house from the indigo sky. In the west, the red sun was setting, muting the purple mountains that blended into the tawny gold desert below. Central to the old world design of the southwest, a double arch entrance with potted pindo palms landscaped the walkway leading west, past the front door to a glass laboratory where Professor Farrell sat writing at a cluttered desk. Through the lab windows behind her, we could see a large, inviting swimming pool, a cool oasis of glistening cobalt. John clambered out of the Jeep, first past the main entrance to the open lab door. A couple of beers made him over-anxiousness. For he knew Lucia had analyzed the sand in her ancient Egyptian box. "Lucia, I want to know what the composition is," he said, as his eyes searched her desk for a glimpse of the magic compound. In the past, we had worked with Lucia on several of her genetic experiments, so John felt comfortable calling her by first name. "It is something I didn't expect," said Lucia, motioning us to a small vial of the stuff on the lab counter past her desk. Rhodium and iridium are elements found in carrot, grape, or aloe vera juice, blood roots, lecithin granules, St. Worts, blue-green algae, watercress, almond and apricot seeds, Mexican wild yarn, flax seed oil, shark cartilage, and pig brain. She took a breath and continued. The major ingredients of this powder are rhodium and iridium, with trace percentages of platinum, silver, and gold. Then I heard her say, she had my attention. No, and I'm sorry. When I heard her say gold, she had my attention. But John looked puzzled as she continued. The element iridium is found in gravel deposits with platinum and used with osmium to tip gold pin points, and also used in cancer irradiation, hypodermic needles, and helicopter spark plugs. She paused. Rhodium is obtained as a byproduct of nickel production and used as a coating to prevent wear on high-quality science equipments, and with platinum to make thermocouples. But both are transition metals with cubic-centered crystal structures, as are gold, silver, and platinum. For a moment, Lucia's voice became distant, fading into oblivion as I looked at the sun, a red half moon in the mountains that was dying in the darkening sky. It may have been the effect of the night rising that made the sun coalesce into a triangle crystal as it sunk into the earth. I wasn't sure. Then I realized I missed a lot of what Lucia was saying, but John was attentive, and she continued explaining that the Egyptians were aware of iron, gold, silver, and copper. She then said that they had easily processed the natural elements found in the earth by sifting the dirt out of the desert sand, and the result was the soft white powder, which she was now emptying from the vial into a petri dish. It had a turquoise blue fluorescent glow and was hypnotic. Obviously, this desert powder has some interesting properties, I mused as I bent down to smell it, but it had no color. It looked like dynamite, an invention that made a fortune for Alfred Nobel. He just packaged an existing explosive in a less combustible form. Actually, humans have been interested in blowing each other up since the creation of Greek fire. The Greeks simply added saltpeter to combustible mixtures already in use. Then the 11th century Chinese mixed sulfur, potassium nitrate, and charcoal to get black gunpowder. In the 19th century, a Swiss chemist discovered nitrocellulose, but its unstable manufacture led to several unfortunate deaths. But that did not stop them. In 1847, an Italian chemist concocted nitroglycerin, and it was this volatile component or compound that Alfred Nobel attempted to stabilize. Even though an explosion killed his younger brother in 1864, he persisted until he mixed the nitro with a clay, then stabilized it. Sure, he had reservations about dynamite potential for destructive military use. So now what? He had the invention of dynamite really conferred the greatest benefits on humanity? Was it the most important chemical discovery or improvement? That was the criteria for the chemistry Nobel Prize. Apparently, old Alfred's conscience must have bothered him, so he funded the Nobel Prizes for physics, chemistry, medicine, and literature, along with the prize for peace. Lost in the intensity of my thought, I watched John and Lucia quietly reviewing the research. Another cyclone of trivia spun through my mind. Not everyone who deserved the Nobel Prize gets one. Leo Tolstoy, one of the greatest writers of the 19th century, was nominated in 1901 for literature, and again in 1902, but the judges passed him over because Tolstoy rejected church and government authority. He championed nonviolent protests of the Russian nobility. Count Leo Tolstoy gave away money to thousands of peasants who remembered his generosity by lining the streets at his funeral. After being turned down twice for the Nobel Prize, Tolstoy simply said it was okay because he regarded money as the source of every evil. But not everyone accepts the Nobel Prize. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre declined the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1964, rejecting the $53,000 award. Sartre said, "A writer must refuse to allow himself to be transformed into an institution, even if it takes place in the most honorable form." In contrast, Nobel laureate Fritz Haber, who invented the process for turning air into nitrogen, fertilizer for food production, accepted the 1918 Chemistry Prize, and his maxim was, "A scientist belongs to his country in times of war and to all mankind in times of peace." For this reason, Haber pioneered the use of poison gas in World War I. In April of 1915, the German army used chlorine gas for the first time against the French at Ypres in Belgium. The French soldiers saw billow clouds of yellow-green toxins drifting towards them, and then they inhaled peppery pineapple odor that left them with chest pain, burning throats, and slow death by asphyxiation. When these attacks began, the Allied troops wore masks of cotton pads soaked in urine to neutralize the chlorine. Fritz Haber directed the poison gas offense, which his wife Clara, also a chemist, must have resented, for she killed herself with his pistol. This tragedy, along with the legacy of chemical warfare and the fact that nitrogen now contaminates our environment, has polluted Haber's contribution. Still, it is interesting that 5 months after the Germans pioneered the use of chlorine gas at Ypres, the British lost the Battle of Loos, even though they used chlorine gas and greatly outnumbered the Germans. Under the direction of General Sir Douglas Haig, the British released tons of the accessory, the code name for chlorine, and the toxic chemical blew back on the British troops because of the wind, causing about 2,600 casualties and 7 deaths. Despite the 1899 Hague Convention's prohibition against employing poisons or poison arms, the International Peace Treaty could not stop the Germans or their allies from using poison gas, nor would it stop future aggressions from chemical warfare. I mused. Just then, a pulse of cold air blew into the lab as John opened the door and walked outside into the dust. He lit up a cigarette, and the smoke swirled upward like quicksilver in the red glow left by the sun. So it seems that the peace treaties against poison gas and chemical manipulation are useless in the modern world of warfare. But to me, this kind of uncivilized behavior is scientific misconduct and needs to be stopped. Concerned and hopeful that war would die, my mind groped into the future, for I was precognitive. As futurity flashed forth, I knew that chemists at the renowned University of Chicago would synthesize a new explosive, a molecule of 8 carbon atoms to which they would attach nitro groups. This highly combustible cube, with an explosive energy content greater than any known nuclear device, will become a reality in the year 2000. They will call it octane nitrocubane, a real feather in the college's cap. So I could say war helmet for the U.S. Defense Department and the National Science Foundation were the funding sources for the research. The inventors would claim that the octane nitrocubane would burn into carbon dioxide and nitrogen upon denotation, and would casually claim it can kill you, but it can't be toxic. And even the American Chemical Society's Chemistry's magazine would herald the synthesis of octane nitrocubane as one of the year's chemistry milestones. Things would certainly come full circle if the inventors of this explosive cube were nominated for the Nobel Chemistry Prize. Bear with me, because along with this being precognitive about world events, I remember trivia, unusual details, unique information. My need to recall gets especially bad when I'm nervous, as I was now about the potential use of Lucier's powder. John seemed concerned also, but with John, his concern was linked to the obsession to unveil some mystic truth that would improve human life, not destroy it. I watched him flick his cigarette toward the first star, and then he came through the door talking. "What makes you think the Egyptians processed this powder?" he asked, moving closer to watch Lucia carefully pick up the petri dish of iridescent powder with two hands as if it was octane nitrocubane. With her auburn hair in her eyes, she looked like a savage fire priestess making an offering to a god at a snake shrine. There was something ominous about her undivided attention. That powder. When my grandfather excavated the Great Pyramid, he found this all over the floor of the king's chamber, she said, as she funneled the powder back into the vial, tapping the lid tightly shut. I felt a sudden relief until she said the Egyptians may have used it in their initiation rites. John studied her carefully, and I was silent, but Lucille would say no more. She darted inside an adjoining room where she placed the sand in a safe cemented to the floor. Seconds later, she emerged to promise that we would learn more in the morning. Then she told us we had a second floor accommodations, saying that we were welcome to the food and the pool, but that she had to work tonight. After she went back to the lab, we drank most of our beer and grilled a couple of the mesquite burgers for dinner because Lucia does not cook. All right, and that's the end of chapter 5. We will come back with chapter 6 when we meet again. But until then, peace kings and peace queens, be safe.